Hello everybody, welcome back. My name is Apotheosis. I am going to talk to you today about some strategies on how to counter tolerance, and this is part 2 of my tolerance video series. So if you missed part 1, check out the first video because I break down tolerance and resistance to a level that every player should be able to understand what exactly is going on, and that information is kind of mandatory to fully benefit from the strategies that I have for you today. Again, I will have timestamps in the description below if you want to skip ahead straight to the strategy section. I'm going to break down each of these strategies real simple for everyone to understand. Otherwise, I do need to talk to you guys and ask you guys real quick, please keep an open mind. Okay, please don't be discouraged when you see me two-manning Trent 10 with Kang Rim. Okay, he is a legendary Elune, but he's actually suboptimal for two-manning Trent 10. I'm going to talk about that later. Please don't get discouraged when you see Mikazuki, okay? She's not mandatory. I am presenting to you strategies to implement to your team. Apply them to your elunes and your CC deck. You're going to increase how much crowd control you land. You're going to increase how many bosses you kill by understanding how tolerance is working. Because so many players are asking, at the same time, they're asking, why is my CC not landing? And at the same time, they're pumping up that boss's resistance by landing tolerance after tolerance after tolerance. Okay, so that's what the goal of this video was. Find strategies that every player can use, like resetting tolerance stacks. This is actually a very useful skill to develop, and I'm going to show you how to do that. First though, we are going to talk about a much simpler strategy, and that's just to decrease our enemy's resistance. We did talk about that indirect counter to tolerance. Since that's pumping the resistance through the roof, that indirect counter is to lower the enemy's resistance. So we can just bring an Elune that's particularly good at this. He does it passively, costs no souls to do it. His name is Gaonsari. He's also farmable, so every player has access to him in the game. But like I said, on his S1, when he attacks a target, if that attack lands, he doesn't get evaded, he attaches an amulet. Okay, that amulet attachment cannot be resisted because it is a soul effect. We talked about that in the last video. Then, because of his passive Amulet Essence, the resistance rate of all status effects is reduced by 10%. So you can see in the graphic I have, this is Trent 10 before the amulet. His base resistance is 17% physical, 70% spell. All of his resistances go down by 10%. You can see that on the right. This is after the amulet is attached. And you can see Gaonsari is not greedy at all here. He's not increasing the chance for only his abilities to land. He's helping everybody out by interacting directly with that target's resistance and every school of resistance, not just the ones that he works with. He's helping the entire team land 10% more skill effects. And it's because of these two benefits that I think Gaonsari might actually hold a higher place in today's meta than a lot of players actually give him credit for. I think his value actually increases in a dungeon like Iscariot 10. You look at Iscariot's base resistances against all spell effects, against all skill effects, compared to Trent 10. I'm not too worried about CCing Trent 10 in the first turn because he has 17% physical resistance. My Chloe Van has 25% additional chance to land an effect because of her full moon set. Okay, he's probably going to get CC'd in that opening turn. God forbid he evaded, right? I'm probably going to survive that opening turn. Now compare these points to Iscariot 10. If I don't crowd control this boss in the opening turn, I'm probably going to die. My entire burning run, done, okay? On top of that, he has high base resistances. Why am I not bringing both schools of resistances, right? I'm bringing 2 schools of CC to Iscariot. I'm bringing both of them down by 10%. I'm increasing my chances of crowd controlling Iscariot in the first turn. So if you're having trouble on Iscariot 10, your CC deck isn't 100% on burning mode, why not bring Gaonsari? I think his value actually skyrockets in some of these places where people are struggling. These last two are more or less just interactions that I need you to be aware of when you're looking at including Gaonsari into your strategy. They're not necessarily cons because when you look at his Elune peers, there's no one really doing what Gaonsari does as well as he does it. Okay, you're bringing him to reduce resistance and he's going to do it better than anyone else. But you do need to be aware that he does benefit slightly from speed tuning. You don't need to go all out here. You just need to make sure that Gaonsari moves and attacks before your crowd controller does. Okay, he doesn't just walk in the room and the resistance is dropped by 10%. Remember, he has to apply his amulet and then that reduction kicks in by 10%. Okay, second, the reduction does cap at 10%. So technically, Charlotte has a higher reduction cap because she can go up to 50%. but you need to look at the condition involved in her passive. She needs to be attacked. So when we're talking about crowd controlling a target, that target is not attacking Charlotte. So it's never stacking up to 5, hopefully, if you're doing what you're doing correctly. In our discussion, Gaonsari is the best at what he does. Okay? But on top of that, since it caps at 10%, tolerance resistance increases do not cap. You can keep applying tolerance, and that resistance will keep increasing. It doesn't matter how many attempts you reapply that amulet, it's done at 10%. Okay, you just need to be aware of that when you're including him in your strategy. And this is also where, we're talking about increasing tolerance stacks. You might want to start considering our other strategies. You might want to consider resetting your tolerance stacks. You might want to consider bringing Mikazuki to bring those tolerance stacks down. The last point of discussion when it comes to decreasing resistance would be a gear set called Full Moon. Currently in game, the tooltip was translated wrong, so it should read for the 3 set that it gives you 25% additional chance to land your effects. Okay, I'm not putting too much information in this video about that gear set because I don't know how it interacts with resistance. Does it decrease enemy resistance by 25%? Or does it take your chance to land your effect? So imagine the enemy was 60% resistant, you have 40% chance to land. Does it give you 25% of your 40, so only 10%? Or is it giving you that full 25%? I'm not too sure. It would actually take a lot of experimentation to find this out. So for this video, just know that if you want to land your effects right now, you should be wearing the 3 set full moon gear. Our next strategy is to reset your tolerance stacks. This gives you an entirely clean slate to work with. You don't have to work with anything else other than the base resistance of that boss, as opposed to working with the 30, 40, 50% resistance that you added with those stacks. Gives you a much higher success rate when it comes to landing your effects, especially when it matters. You want to start using this strategy, reset your tolerance stacks. First, you need to make sure that your composition, your team synergy is capable of pulling this off. So let's look at what you need to pull this off. It's actually a pretty simple condition. However, it is very difficult to get there. It takes careful move selection. It is a decision-making process. But the condition you need to satisfy is that your crowd control duration needs to be longer than your tolerance duration. You can see where tolerance plays against us in this goal. Crowd control typically in this game is 2 or 3 turns long, and whenever we apply that crowd control, we're already going against our victory condition because our tolerance is naturally longer than our CC. And we need to get to a point where our CC is longer than our tolerance. Okay, so this is where it's going to be beneficial to bring 2 schools of crowd control, and you're going to use the opposite school to reset the opposite tolerance stacks. In addition, you need to be fully aware of any and all skill effects that you might be applying actively or passively. So that means you need to look at your abilities, you need to look at your passives and your skill gem effects, because you don't want to choose to reset physical tolerance and then use a physical effect. If you accidentally apply this while you're resetting it, it will refresh the duration and you're in a much harder predicament in trying to reset your stacks. This is where adding 2 simple questions to the formula really helped smooth out the tutorial phase of this. Okay, remember, your goal is to get to a point to where your CC duration is longer than your tolerance. So if you ask yourself these questions every time you make a move, you will get to that point. Okay, and you will eventually reset your tolerance stacks. Ask yourself, with this move, am I increasing my CC duration? Am I allowing tolerance to expire? Okay, if the answer is no, don't use that move. Okay, it's not achieving your goal of resetting these stacks. Let's take a look at a couple of examples. In the scenario above the formula, do I want to use Chloe Van's Paralyze here? I would be increasing my CC duration by gaining a 3-turn crowd control compared to my 2-turn. However, I'm not allowing tolerance to expire. I need to consider that Paralyze is a physical effect. Therefore, when I apply that to the target, it's going to refresh the duration on my physical tolerance back to 5 turns. And therefore, I'm not allowing tolerance to expire. That move is a no-go. How about Kang Rim's S2? Do I want to attempt to reapply the restraint here? Actually wouldn't even be increasing CC duration because my Kang Rim's S2 is not skilled up to 3-turn duration. Okay, all I would actually be doing by reapplying it before the boss takes a turn is pushing him to the back of the order queue, giving me more room to make mistakes and accidentally refresh that physical tolerance. I'm also applying more resistance to future attempts to restrain him. So worst case scenario, what could actually happen here is that physical tolerance falls off the target. I attempt to paralyze for the boss's next 3 turns, and the boss evades every time. While he's evading, I'm probably going to be reattempting that restrain, and I'm probably going to wish that I didn't increase that boss's resistance to my restrain attempts by another 10%. You do have some wiggle room when it comes to your decision making and you're practicing and learning this skill. Okay, tolerance is actually self-limiting in its own mechanic. The more tolerance that a target gains, the more resistant he becomes to your efforts to screw up your decision making, right? Chances are he's gonna resist your faulty decision, and then when he resists, it does not refresh that duration. Okay, tolerance actually naturally expires on its own. The problem is we're trying to get it to expire without the target taking a turn. This is why you need to understand this formula, these questions, utilizing that extra school of CC, and minimizing your attempts to refresh that tolerance that you're forcing to expire. The next level of thinking that you want to develop is minimizing risk and maximizing reward. And this definitely goes into play when you're choosing which tolerance you want to reset. Okay, if you follow the previous formula, again, that's a generic, basic, let's get started with resetting stacks way for you to understand how this is working. This is the next level of thinking. You want to consider all of these things because it is somewhat of a fluid decision. From one turn to the next, this decision might change depending on what gets resisted or what lands on the target. Okay, at the end of the day, we are playing with percentage chances. That's the number one thing to remember. You can plan ahead all you want, and sometimes you're going to get screwed. And as much as you try or maximize your efforts, what you wanted to happen didn't happen. And that's where this decision making is really going to come into play, and it becomes a fluid decision making process. Sometimes these scenarios or these criteria are exclusive decision makers, without looking at any of the other conditions, right? You can look at the first one, lowest duration tolerance currently on the target. If we take a look at that criteria in relation to the example we were using earlier, where we have 5-turn duration on our spell tolerance, 1 turn on our physical tolerance, that lowest duration is definitely the one that we want to go with, right? We don't even need to consider anything else. We're going to want to reset that physical tolerance. However, sometimes it does come into play to look at some other criteria as well. Most susceptible CC without tolerance. For example, Trent 10 being so much more susceptible to physical crowd control, you're setting yourself up for more reward because after you succeed in removing those stacks, you're going to have a much higher probability rate of landing that physical effect than if you were trying to count on your spell effect if you chose to reset spell tolerance stacks. Okay, so work your way through this list. See how it might mold your decision making and impact your critical thinking. Okay, I've said about all I can say about this. You might want to pause it here and think about how it might apply to your deck or the boss that you're targeting. And regrettably, again, I've reached the limit of my ability to create content in one day. So I will come back to the Mikazuki section of this video. I think there is definitely enough content related to her kit and her interactions with tolerance to make its own video about it, so that's fine. I'm happy I was able to address how to reset tolerance stacks because I think it's something that a lot of people could benefit from if they learned how to do it. Keep an eye out for my Mikazuki video. For now, I hope I wasn't too vague. I hope I broke stuff down to a very simple level that everyone could understand. If you have any questions, please hit me up in the comments. Send me a message on Discord. Again, this is just a hobby of mine. I don't intend on becoming a content creator, but I am going to put content out where I can because to me, this medium is a lot easier than addressing everybody on Reddit or in Discord. I can just direct them to a video, say, hey, this is where you're having trouble with killing your bosses. All right, again, thanks for your attention. I hope I was able to help you out. Stay tuned for future content. Thanks.